Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Handpicked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, and Virginia. WynnBET is now live in all these states, and the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas has finally landed in online sports betting and casino play. From boosted parlays to live in-game odds on every major sport, WynnBET gives you the tools to win. Sign up today for your risk-free $1,000 sports bet. Download the WynnBET app now or visit wynnbet.com to start winning. The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline, a Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike. I'm here with Sam. Sam, how you doing?
I'm doing great, my friend. How are you?
Pretty good. I mean, it's like not a lot of Suns. I'll be honest, not a lot of Suns talk this week as far as they just didn't play a lot of games. So right. We can't really break down all the games. No Devin Booker, but they won 2 in a row without Devin Booker. So far, so good.
And one without DeAndre Ayton as well.
Yeah. Really impressive game against the struggling Boston Celtics. In this episode, we have our friend, best writer at Bleacher Report, Dan Favale, joining us later in the episode, host of the Hardwood Knocks podcast. We're going to talk about all the contenders in the NBA so far, teams that are just outside of the contender pool, and then we're going to break down some trade options for the Suns this season because players are eligible to be traded, newly signed players, on December 15th. Stick around for that. Make sure and listen to that part of the podcast. Quickly, I want to mention as well, if you haven't already, check out our appearance on Kevin O'Connor's podcast on The Mismatch called The Void. It's on the feed for The Mismatch. It came out on Wednesday. It was all Suns talk and some minor stuff on other teams at the end. We tried to represent you guys well. I know there are people who are not on Twitter that listen to this podcast, so I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of that. That was really fun, right, Sam?
It was super fun. With regard to the Suns talk, I kind of feel like I'm going on, other podcasts at this point and sort of doing my politician stump speech. So I don't know if any of the analysis there will be, stuff that people who are regular listeners of our podcast here have not heard in the past. But, I thought all of the other NBA stuff we talked about was really interesting too. Some cool concepts. Yeah. And man, KOC is just, he's dope. He's a really chill guy. So yeah.
Yes. I wanted to record an intro without Dan real quick because I wanted to quickly mention for those who didn't see it, there was another report on the Robert Sarver story that I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of, and that report was that former employees who have signed non-disclosure agreements with the Phoenix Suns will be released from those NDAs as it pertains to the NBA investigation into Robert Sarver. So anyone that has left from the Phoenix Suns who Robert Sarver and the Suns have basically got them to sign that they won't talk about their time with the Phoenix Suns for one reason or another, you can fill in the blank there, will now be free to talk about whatever happened. The report also included that those former employees have taken very detailed notes on their time with the Suns and do plan on speaking with the investigators. Basically, just to let you know, the investigation is heating up. There's not a lot of substantial news so far, but I do think that the news about those former employees who were unsure of whether or not they can speak with the Phoenix Suns now being allowed to speak with the Phoenix Suns is important news so far.
Right. My understanding is that this was an expected step, but it is nonetheless very important towards having a transparent investigation. And so, yeah, we'll keep you guys posted as updates and other bits of news from that investigation come in the future.
Yeah. We don't have a lot to talk about when it comes to that story, but we will give you updates on the things that do come out. But for now, let's switch over to Dan because it's a long conversation and I think it's very good and very interesting and I hope you guys enjoy it. Make sure, once again, to listen to the Hardwood Knocks podcast.
Please.
Follow Dan on Twitter. He's really, really great. I know Bleacher Report gets some heat sometimes. He's one of the good ones. Let's just say that.
Hardwood Knocks really is one of my favorite NBA podcasts. He and Adam do a tremendous job. So I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yeah, really fantastic. We'll switch over to that right now. Okay, Dan, thank you so much for joining us. We wanted to have a conversation on contenders in the NBA since we're always so laser focused on the Phoenix Suns. We wanted to open this up and talk about other teams in the NBA. First of all, Dan, how are you doing?
I am spectacular. How are you gentlemen doing?
Very
Not
well,
bad.
thank you.
No, it's hard to complain when the team is playing so well right now. I know that you're a secret Suns fan, as we all know. On this podcast, you're allowed to be open with that fandom here on this podcast. But how do you think the Suns have been playing so far?
I mean, they've been freaking spectacular. And I have, I might be, whether it's a closet Suns fan or just an agenda. They were my title pick. I'm a Suns fan, certainly this season. And I think they've been so good that when they struggled to start the year, I was just like, no, they're just going to be fine. Like after how deep they went into the postseason last year and some of the things that you saw and just knowing that Chris Paul was going to be better and Devin Booker was going to be fine. That's an amazing thing to really stop and think about, though, knowing where the Suns were, 2 years ago. But for us to just think at the beginning of the season, oh, they're struggling, but no, they're still going to be the best team in the West. They'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's gotten to a point with them where like, you can hit little snags now, and DeAndre Ayton misses a few games here and there, or Devin Booker right now dealing with the hamstring. And it's like, yes, when this team is at full strength, like you go into San Francisco and get your ass clapped by the Warriors. Like if you're playing a true, real contender, but you can play other teams that are like borderline playoff teams. Like you go into that game against Boston, and I was thinking, no Booker, no Ayton, they'll be lucky if they narrowly escape here. And then they blew them out. So like there's a level of confidence with this team that I just haven't experienced before. Booker will probably miss another week or so. We don't have any firm updates on that, but it's like I am not worried about that in the slightest right now. This team can handle business with or without him.
And JaVale McGee, I thought that was not a bad signing, but I think we discussed this on my podcast. I was kind of disenchanted with parts of their offseason, and he's just been absolutely great for them. Frank Kaminsky was wonderful before he got injured. They've gotten really more out of Landry Shamet than any team since the Sixers when he was a rookie, I think. So, Elfrid Payton is still on this team, so that's something to think about.
That's something we'll need to talk about in the second half of this episode.
He's playing.
For sure.
He's playing.
He's playing, Dan. He's playing.
That's the problem.
I know. I mean, if Devin Booker was healthy, and it doesn't help that even Abdel Nader, who wasn't, great when he was playing, but he's another wing that really doesn't necessarily need the ball to be effective. The ideal Abdel Nader season is he's able to shoot corner threes and get to the rim occasionally, whereas Elfrid Payton can't shoot threes, and when he gets to the rim, he gets blocked most of the time. So I don't know. It's a tough thing with him playing. So when Devin Booker comes back, I imagine that'll be cut down dramatically. But yeah, the Suns obviously playing relatively well, but let's get into some of the other teams and how they're playing right now. I want to first just check to see that we all have the same list of contenders right now, because I wrote down contenders that I believe are like for sure contenders right now, including the Suns. I have 5 teams right now. Dan, do you have 5 teams as well?
I do.
Okay. And Sam, I assume you do as well.
I have 5 teams. I assume they're the same 5 teams for all of us.
Yeah. And I'll just say it right now. Warriors, Jazz, Suns, Bucks, and Nets, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yep, those are mine. I want to be kind of trolling and say that I have the Cavs in there, but I don't.
Yes. Well, we'll get to them. We'll get to them.
I think there's, and I would say 5 teams as well that are like maybe just outside of that I'd like to talk about in a second as well. Maybe talk about, since it's trade season coming up. It opens up mostly on December 15th. We can talk about that as well. But let's cover some of these teams. We've talked a lot about the Warriors so far this season because the Suns have played them twice. They're playing them again on Christmas Day. This is shaping up to be somewhat of a rivalry. As much as I still don't feel like it, I think the narratives are going to be pushed that this is a rivalry, thanks to Chris Paul and Steph Curry and, all they've been through in the playoffs over the years. You picked the Suns to win the title, you said, Dan, before the season. Are the Warriors scaring you right now?
Scaring's a strong word. I have contemplated whether they should be the favorite above Phoenix, but the thing that I can't get around is that the non-Steph minutes are still a problem for them offensively. And I know those become fewer and further between in the playoffs, but you can still lose a game and then a series because of the 6 to 10 to 12 minutes you're playing without Steph Curry. And the Suns just don't. It's even when Steph Curry's on the floor, we've seen where if he's going to have those nights where not all of his threes are going in at a ridiculous clip, and maybe some of the other players are off, Jordan Poole can't carry the offense like that. Andrew Wiggins can't do that, at least not reliably. And the Suns, when you look at their dual star minutes when Booker's going to be healthy, if one of them doesn't have it going, like you still have the other one, and then they're both, again, I believe, winning the minutes without each other. And so that's just an element the Warriors aren't even going to have with Klay Thompson out. You could look at different lineup combinations for them, but they try to tether Draymond Green and Steph together pretty tightly. And Klay Thompson's just not the type of player to run an offense. And there's looming over the specter of all this is they have James Wiseman coming back, and he was an actively detrimental player for them last season. So I don't think he's going to cost them the title, but if you decide to play him, you're making a concession. And I think, I still have concerns about how the Suns will operate if they're offense gets thrown for a whirl like it did against Milwaukee, but to just have Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and Jay Crowder's floater now, I guess, plus Mikal Bridges, it just feels like this team is still a notch to me above the Warriors, even though it's much, much, much closer than I had it at the beginning of the season.
You're talking about the whole Steph Curry, what happens when Steph Curry goes to the bench. And I do point out, that is exactly how the Suns actually beat LeBron in the first round last year. The Lakers were underratedly one of the teams that gave the Suns the most trouble up until the finals. And it was just because LeBron would go to the bench and he would play 34 minutes when he used to play 40 to 42 back when he was, a different beast. And, they would take control of the game. So that's obviously a concern. But yeah, man, Wiseman, what you just said, you could get yourself in trouble for saying that about Wiseman in certain corners of the internet. I'm glad you can be honest with us.
Our YouTube, we had a YouTube video that we put up on the Hardwood Knocks channel, a clip from our podcast, and it got destroyed in the comment section because we were pretty open, my guest and I, that look, James Wiseman might be fine for his career, but if I'm the Warriors, I'm punting on his second season right now. They've been more hush hush about his return from a less serious injury than they have about Klay Thompson's. And so I think that tells you how much they think he can, or rather cannot, help them this year, which is just, it's fine. He's played fewer than 20 games since he was a senior in high school. I don't think it's a mean thing to say. I think it's just more of a reality check.
Yeah. Yeah. And even to some extent, the Klay Thompson returning from injury, if he's not quite up to speed at first, it could take some time to get him there. But I feel like if people get mad at you for saying that, you should just respond with that video of Draymond talking about how fans don't recognize good defense, because that's the issue so far with Wiseman is, if he's on the floor and in the playoffs and the Suns are playing the Warriors, the Suns are going at him every single possession. They're putting him in as many actions as possible to try and attack that. And even Klay Thompson, if he's slow on defense, if his lateral quickness is affected at all, they're going to do the same thing to him. And I think what you described in the non-Steph Curry minutes is exactly why a lot of their title hopes is dependent on how Klay Thompson looks when he comes back, which is, good and bad news for teams that are facing the Warriors, because if he comes back and he looks great, it's tough for the Suns at that point. I think that at that point, the Warriors become the favorites considerably, in my opinion. And if he comes back and his defense is not quite right, defense mostly, I'm going to say his offense, the shooting is probably still going to be there. But if the defense doesn't look quite right, the Warriors have one of the best defenses of all time right now. I think that's going to affect them pretty dramatically.
Yeah, and I mean, if in a normal circumstances, go back 2 years before he was injured, I guess I'm closer to 3 years at just this point. Jesus Christ. He's going to guard Chris Paul or Devin Booker in this matchup. And now all of a sudden, could we be looking at a situation where he's actually on not even Mikal Bridges, but Jay Crowder? Yeah. Like because they don't know how he's going to necessarily move on defense. And that's a pretty big workaround. I hope Klay Thompson looks the same and the matchup becomes infinitely more compelling if he does. But I think there are, even with him coming back, and the defense has been fantastic. They've won the non-Steph minutes this year because of their defense. I just don't think that's a sustainable model once you get to the playoffs, and you're still banking a lot on Jordan Poole during the Steph minutes or the non-Steph minutes to keep up his finishing at the rim. And he's been, lately for them more consistent and great, but are he and Wiggins the players that you want to hitch your non-Steph minutes or even just your secondary scorer minutes to?
Now, to address the wild card with this team real quick, though, guys, because I agree with everything you're saying so far, but we are going to talk about trades in the second half of this episode as it relates pretty much to the Suns. Quickly about how it relates to the Warriors, this is one of the contenders with the biggest plethora of young talent, right? So we're talking about how if Wiseman comes back, he's a negative. Well, what if you take Wiseman? What if you take Kuminga? What if you take Moses Moody? Is there a package in there that this team can build out that they would be willing to experiment with to go out and make a trade that puts them over the top? Dan, what do you think?
I don't think they'd be willing is really the issue here, because if you could tell me, this is a different way of going about if they were to face the Suns. If you can get Ben Simmons for this team, after watching Draymond Green and Kevon Looney again this season, I'm fine with the idea of Ben Simmons in Golden State. I think they would figure it out. Or the dream target is, what is Toronto doing? It doesn't seem like they're actively trying to move Pascal Siakam, but you have Scotty Barnes there. They've developed some chemistry, but you also have OG Anunoby there. Pascal Siakam would be great for the Warriors, and I think
that would be terrifying.
Oh, yeah. And they have the type of assets to get a name like that, is my point. I mean, with the Sixers, it seems like there need to be a third team in there because they want more of a win now package. But you're absolutely right that they have the assets stable to go out there and make a big move. But I think they're very much in light years mode at the top with Joe Lacob, where he thinks that they have players who are going to bridge them into the next era while still competing in the current one.
Yeah, and maybe they're right, to be honest. And it seems like all of the chatter around them is that they seem pretty content to just stay where they're at. Just reading the tea leaves on the low post, they seem to really imply that. So we'll see if they end up doing that. That's the Warriors. We've talked a lot about them. I want to move on to a team that I was wrong about, and that's the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz, they're catching up to the Golden State Warriors in net rating at this point. The Utah Jazz have an insane 11.3 net rating. So they're killing teams, especially in the last 10 or so games. I think they won 7 in a row on the road, which is insane. And they're just playing really well. And here's what I thought about the Jazz coming into this season. They really don't have, outside of Donovan Mitchell, players that are on an upward trajectory, because a lot of their roster is older. And you have to think that at some point that aging is going to catch up with them. The thing that helps them a lot is Donovan Mitchell is incredible so far this season. He's seriously amazing. And if you haven't watched the Jazz lately, I suggest watching them, because what he's doing in his ability to, first of all, the pull-up shooting is insane. They shoot in a crazy amount. They have a number one offense in the NBA. They shoot a crazy amount of threes. But Donovan Mitchell's handles have gotten to a point where he can do some really crazy stuff to get to the rim, and his finishing at the rim has been really good so far this season. I expected them to have somewhat of a disaster season because of a combination of age and unhappiness with just getting to the playoffs and getting beat in the playoffs over and over and over again with essentially the same team. That has not been the case. I apologize to anyone who I got excited about that possibility. Their defense was bad at the beginning of the season. They're now 6th in defensive rating, the Jazz, with one of the best offenses, basically. Dan, what do you think about the Jazz so far?
They're legit. I just don't think they're in the same tier as the Warriors and the Suns. So I don't want to call them paper tigers, but it's still, the concerns for me are the same. Can they punish teams for going small on offense if you're going to have Rudy Gobert on the court? Because that's probably where that is where the bigger issues have lied for them. It has not been his defense. If you're concerned about the defense, it's the defense in front of him when teams go small, or when you're facing those elite point of attack creators. It puts a lot of onus on him that he really can't shoulder alone. And so can you go out and find I still think they're like a wing short of being that team, of entering the Warriors Suns level. And it's not like, I don't think it needs to be a star wing, but think about what Torrey Craig did for the Suns last year. If you put Torrey Craig on the Jazz right now, I might really consider throwing them into the same tier as the Warriors and the Suns. And you mentioned their offense and what Donovan Mitchell has done. There are 78 players right now who are attempting at least 4 pull-up jumpers per game. Mike Conley leads the league in effective field goal percentage on that shot by 6 points. He has been just absolutely mind-melting for them. And so, even with Jordan Clarkson, he's perked up a little bit, but he hasn't been great. The fact that they're this good, it's definitely encouraging. I just wonder, is there another move to be made? Like, you do have Jordan Clarkson's salary. Can you do something there? You can't trade a pick, I think, until 2026. I believe they traded 2024, but they, I think, are a team that can justify not making an all-in move, but when you're looking at trading a distant first rounder like Denver did last year, they're a team that's so good that you absolutely make that move, because if they're not one of the, I think you could argue right now that the 3 most dangerous title contenders in the Western Conference, I still like Milwaukee better than Utah a little bit, but Utah's so close that I almost want them to make sort of a needle nudging move. Again, it doesn't have to be a blockbuster. They just feel like that one wing type player short.
The proposition of that Torrey Craig acquisition for them is kind of scary. It's doubly scaring, because obviously, like you said, it makes their rotation, their 8, 9, 10-man rotation better, but also because the Suns need a Torrey Craig too. The Suns lost Torrey Craig. And so, you talk about matching up with this team specifically. You said if their biggest issues are in tackling small ball, well, the Suns don't effectively have a small ball option right now. And the Suns are playing that conservative drop pick and roll scheme for the most part. And it's been very, very successful for them. But yeah, then you look at stats like the Jazz take over 3 more pull-up threes per game than the second highest team. That would be the New York Knicks. They hit 37% of them. They take twice as many pull-up threes as the Suns. There's formula there. I don't know how it holds up in a 7-game series. And I do believe the Suns are, I would say we're slightly better right now. But there's potential there. There's a mathematical formula there that you can see would lead you to success.
Yeah. I mean, look, sorry, I'm just gonna say the shots that Sam's were mentioning, like those are the shots you have to hit in the playoffs too. And so sort of how the Suns are uniquely built to get to those in-between spots and still make those in the playoffs against most defensive coverages, the Jazz are able to hit those from all over the floor at what seems like, as Sam mentioned, a higher volume.
How many teams have been successful with that in the NBA with that sort of strategy? Just the Warriors, really, right? I mean, the other team would be it's almost Houston Rockets-esque with the amount of threes that they take. And it just, to me, it seems like often that the type of teams that their offensive identity is so tied to shooting 3-pointers that you need Steph Curry, basically, to be successful at that.
I think you might be right, but on the other hand, Houston was just so obviously trying it with just 1 or 2 guys. I mean, it was really just James Harden, and some years it was also Chris Paul helping him out. But then they had, all of these just plug and play 3-and-D wings who couldn't really create for themselves. And Utah just feels different. They're a much more versatile offensive team.
They have 4 guys who could hit those types of shots, just looking at Clarkson, Bojan Bogdanovic, Mitchell, and Conley. And then even Joe Ingles a little bit, not at the same acceleration, obviously, but he can still hit off the dribble jumpers himself.
Right. Yeah. Like Clarkson, Bogdanovic, Ingles, they're not the equivalent to Trevor Ariza, Bamute, PJ Tucker on offense is what I'm trying to say. Like it's the difference in those guys like 3 through 6.
The other thing they've done, which I don't think will help them in the playoffs, but it is interesting, and they could argue why they would need to make a move, is they played Rudy Gay at center more lately, and those minutes are working. I just don't think that he's like the answer, because I don't think center has ever been the problem for them. It's the guys that are in front of center. But the idea of being able to downsize with Rudy Gay is certainly tantalizing entering the postseason.
And like, how many minutes are they going to play Hassan Whiteside in the playoffs once the playoffs come? Because as good as he's been good so far this season, I think that a lot of the best teams in the NBA are probably going to hope that the Jazz play Hassan Whiteside. But when I talk about when I talk about the 3-point shooting, I just think that the volatility in that type of offense is what explains the net ratings in the NBA so far to me. In that the Warriors are plus 12, the Jazz are plus 11.3, which is crazy. And then the next best team is the Suns at plus 6.6. And what I mean by that is when it's on, you just bury teams in threes, just absolutely bury teams in threes. And that's how you get these really high net ratings. Whereas the Suns have like such a balanced approach. They often are winning games by like 10, 8 points or whatever. They're not winning games by like 30 points. And that's, because of the methodical approach that they have. Every game, it feels like Groundhog Day, to be honest, Sam. Every game I watch right now, the Suns play it close in the first half, pull ahead by the middle of the third quarter. Other teams shoot a ton of threes, get in within striking distance, and then Chris Paul he basically sets up the amount of possessions that the team is going to have against the Suns in a way that they mathematically cannot come back and win the game, because he slows it down in such a way that just makes it impossible to come back and win. And then the Suns win by 8 points or whatever. Like, that seems like how it goes every single game now. And I just wonder how much that translates. And I think with the Warriors, it will. I wonder how much it's going to translate with the Jazz going forward. Let's talk about...
I would just say quickly, last thing here, it's a crying shame that we're talking about all these hypotheticals and we don't get a game between these two teams for another 6 weeks.
That's weird.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not until late January.
And they haven't played yet.
And they haven't played yet. And then they're going to play each other 3 times in like the month of late January to late February. So
I'm mad that they front-loaded Warriors Suns this year.
Yeah.
We're going to have those 3 matchups by Christmas, and two of them weren't even close to having full strength rosters.
Yeah. That's kind of tough. And I don't even know what the Christmas Day game is going to look like. It seems like no Klay Thompson, and we don't really know. I think Devin Booker will be back. We just don't know. We haven't really been told yet. So we'll see what happens there. There's 2 teams that we all had in the East, Bucks and Nets. And I don't know. It's kind of interesting to talk about those 2 teams. Like, the Bucks have a 3.7 net rating right now, and that really, really undersells what they've been doing, because the amount of injuries that they've played with so far this season, it's just been a lot. I think there was a chance that if they came in and they were fully healthy to start the season, that they could have been just absolute juggernauts playing so far. And that 3.7 net rating, a lot of credit, I think, will go to Giannis on that, deservedly so, because they're just, that's pretty incredible for what they've dealt with so far. I think the biggest thing for the Bucks so far is back surgery for Brook Lopez, I believe, is what's happened recently. And Brook Lopez, for all he is, people have talked about his value. I think that he proved it pretty dramatically in the playoffs and in the finals. And he was pretty remarkable. There were times where he was like the focal point of the offense against the Suns in the finals. And, yes, that was in the second and third quarter, but those stretches mattered for the Bucks. What do you think about the Bucks so far this season, Dan?
I think people are sleeping on them, which feels weird to say about the reigning champs, and when I'm not willing to put them above either the Warriors or the Suns. But they've been, you alluded to this already, they've absolutely annihilated opponents when Middleton, Holiday, and Giannis all play together, which has just not been a ton this season. They've played, I think, under 500 possessions together, given all the injuries they dealt with. Drew Holiday's been hitting step back jumpers at a higher clip this year. You mentioned the Brook Lopez concern. I find myself not as worried about that, because you do have the Giannis as the lone big element, and he's clearly more comfortable in that role than ever. And Bobby Portis has been fine for them. I also think that you can, probably not defensively, but you can approximate a lot of what Brook Lopez does on offense for them on the cheap if you need to. I don't know that DeMarcus Cousins is the answer on offense for that. It's certainly not, I wouldn't argue, defensively. They're another team that I think, similar to the Jazz, where it feels like they could use like a move, but they also have Dante DiVincenzo back now. I think he made his debut Saturday night. I did not watch it though. And I don't know how many people who listen to this podcast watch the Bucks. He was monstrous for them last year before his injury. And that just gives them another body to move around defensively. He's really pretty pesky away from the ball, and he can do some stuff on the ball offensively for them. And when people are worried about their offense bogging down at points in the playoffs, he's someone that can give them an outlet there. One of the swing pieces on this team, though, is will Grayson Allen remain like molten in the postseason? And we've seen him. He hasn't really fallen off, but just like, what type of a role is he going to play, especially with Dante DiVincenzo back? And neither him or DiVincenzo are like that point guard type of player. DiVincenzo comes closer. That might be an area of concern for them if you're looking at, if you ever want to sit 2 of your stars at once. But this team is just, I think they're so much better than advertised, because their record and a lot of their vitals right now, because of all those injuries, and absences they've dealt with aren't going to accurately reflect what they're able to do.
I want to get your take on something that I saw some Suns fans running with over the past couple of days. So obviously these two teams, there's a lot of history, and we know how these two teams match up, especially because both of them had a relatively quiet offseason, little moves here and there. By the way, it pains me that Grayson Allen has been as consistent as he has been. He's shooting 42% from deep on 7 attempts per game. He's been really good. With JaVale McGee was asked about this over the past couple of days, and he basically said, yeah, if the Suns had traded for me at midseason last year instead of Denver, we would have gone up. I don't know. I don't remember if he named the Bucks exactly, but he just said we would have won. Suns fans love hearing that. Obviously, we know that this team struggled with size against the Bucks. We know that Dario Saric fell apart in the playoffs, or at least started to fall apart. But is that enough of a difference maker? I know you weren't a huge fan of the JaVale McGee signing in the offseason, but you also gave him credit at the beginning of this episode talking about how great he has played. What do you think?
Would he have made what would be the difference that he made for them on offense? Like, would he have helped them speed up their offense? Or I guess he gives you more rim pressure, but
rim offensive rebounding,
for sure. Rim pressure for sure. And he scoops up the missed campaign layups, I guess. but I don't know that because there's a lot of them. There are a lot of them this season. It's low key been the second unit's go-to play, Dan, is campaign misses a layup and JaVale McGee's there to clean it up. But yeah, I don't know. I think it swings a game.
I mean, maybe. And he probably wouldn't have put, just like if they had him on the court at any point where you had Chris Middleton and Giannis just running their 2-man game, I don't know. Like that, I think he would have helped. I don't know if you can say JaVale McGee would have put them over the top in that series. I mean,
right.
I guess if you're up 2-0 and you have JaVale McGee, like you could just argue the vibes are better, and so you're not going to blow that 2-0 lead. I don't know.
The only way JaVale McGee could have affected the NBA Finals in a way that allowed the Suns to win is if he donated his hamstring to Devin Booker, because the main reason the Suns struggled is that Devin Booker just was not himself for a few of those games, because essentially the hamstring injury that he has now is probably what he had in the NBA Finals. The difference is it's the NBA Finals, so he continued to play. And, I just, to me, if you're looking at this point, at the end of this episode, we're going to throw out some names as potential trade targets for the Suns. The biggest issue that they had is that they have 2 shot creators, and one of them was hampered. And, for the Bucks, they had 3 throughout that series that were able to create their own shots and score consistently. So if one of them was not having a great game, one of the other guys could pick up the slack. Of course, Giannis consistent. I think, at times Chris Middleton, at times Drew Holiday, and the Suns just didn't really have that third guy. I don't think that JaVale McGee is that. So, yeah, I don't agree with that. And part of me wanted to just go to bat for Duncan Smith, he covers the Pistons, and he was saying, he loves when role players think they're the difference in title contenders, because I think he's right, first of all. And a lot of people are going at him saying, don't you watch the Suns? Of course, JaVale will make a big difference. And to some extent he would. I just don't think that that's the type of thing that makes a big difference in the NBA Finals. I think
I want you to remember what you're saying now so that you don't have amnesia 20 minutes from now when we're talking about the types of players that the Suns could acquire for Jalen Smith in a 2nd-round pick, though.
Oh yeah, no, I know. and I have yeah, you'll see my list of players that I have listed. So yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, the Bucks, I think that we have not seen what their final form is going to be. Do you think, like, since it's, trade season opens up on Wednesday, essentially, nothing's going to happen Wednesday probably, but do you think that could they end up with Miles Turner? Is there a world where they end up with Miles Turner, Dan?
I can't see it, just because they probably could make some interesting moves if there's a team that really likes Dante DiVincenzo and you're willing to trade Brook Lopez. But for a guy like Miles Turner, the Bucks can't trade a 1st-round pick right now. And if you're Indiana and you get out of a Miles Turner trade without acquiring a 1st-round pick or a blue chip prospect, that's franchise malpractice.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I just realized having this conversation: Warriors, Jazz, Suns, Bucks, Nets. Do the Suns have the most 1st-round picks to trade out of these teams? They might. Maybe the Warriors. No, I
think the Dubs definitely do. They have they already owe their 2024 pick to Memphis. It might be a tie between the Suns and the Warriors. They're both pretty close because they have
I'd have to double check. Yeah,
because the Jazz don't, the Bucks don't, and the Nets definitely don't.
However,
So-
the Warriors have prospects, and even the Nets actually have a couple prospects, and the Suns don't really have prospects. I mean,
Yep.
it's
It
tough.
helps
The
that-
Suns have young players that they can trade, but whenever you suggest that they trade any of those young players who aren't Jalen Smith, people go berserk on you oftentimes for good reasons. So
Are we sure Jalen Smith isn't untouchable after that game against the Celtics, though? I think it's time we have that conversation.
did you watch that game, Dan?
I did not watch the fourth quarter. I was just wildly
It's
uninterested.
probably- yeah,
by
probably
the
Have
fourth
you
good
quarter.
seen, by the way, Dan, we're just completely going off track now. Have you had the pleasure of watching Ish Wainwright minutes yet?
I've not seen a ton of Ish Wainwright minutes. I do know that you've been spelling his name incorrectly, though. And so
I
I'm
have
just
been spelling.
count
I have
everything
been
you say about
spelling.
him.
You don't have
Wow.
to call me out like that.
Wow.
I have been spelling his name incorrectly. I will now spell his name correctly. Anyway, he's like 1 for 11 in a Suns uniform and is averaging like 10 fouls per 36 minutes. But it kind of gives you an idea of where the Suns depth chart is at right now. That they could certainly use some more.
And they're
Some
still
more wing
winning
depth.
somehow.
Yeah, somehow.
That's the
Paul.
Chris Paul MVP campaign right there. Just
Chris
summed
Paul,
up.
I guess. Yeah.
Ish Wainwright is getting minutes. That should be the first line of Chris Paul's MVP case. Let's talk about the Nets. Last one of these 5, and then because I want to get to the other 5 teams that I have and see if you guys have similar teams that are just outside of that bubble. First of all, Dan, are you tired of talking about the Nets because we have to talk about Kyrie Irving?
You know, I don't know that I'm tired about it because I haven't done it a lot. The Nets, for a team that have the Kyrie Irving stuff going on and then also still have Kevin Durant and James Harden active, and also, as we record this, have the best record in the East, they're not compelling to me, even in the slightest. And so I don't think we've needed to talk about them a ton on a macro scale.
Yeah, it's weird because, like, I mean, they would be really good with Kyrie Irving.
That's a hot take. That's spicy.
But they still have 2 MVPs on the roster, so it's not like, they're the only team that could actually survive missing a player of his caliber and still be as good as they've been, which is like 7th in net rating. Not world beaters, and mainly because I think James Harden is not James Harden as we got used to. Some people will say, well, clearly the foul rules have changed. Now it's more than that. I think that the burst, the athleticism is not quite the same. What have you thought of James Harden so far?
Yeah, he looks like a slightly juiced up Kyle Anderson on offense right now with the
Good Lord.
Obviously not the shots he's taking, but there's the like every other or every third game being a James Harden game is just clearly a problem for this team. And they're still, you look at their vitals and they're fine. But they don't put any sort of pressure on the rim. They're not shooting a great clip from 3. We've seen James Harden. He was hitting his 3s to start the season, even when he was struggling.
Yeah.
That is dipped. And you're just so reliant on Kevin Durant, which, okay. But then LaMarcus Aldridge, which not okay. Just hitting these ridiculously long 2s.
Yeah, at like 60%.
LaMarcus Aldridge's been at like 90% from long 2 for the season after starting ice cold. They are, of these 5 that we're talking about, they feel like the paper tiger, which is something that could probably come back to make me look super stupid, knowing they have Kevin Durant, who is just mega awesome. They are down. It's obvious, a substantial player. It's just that I don't know how they get that player back. And I also, the thing that I just don't understand, I do not read much into their being 8th in points allowed per possession. With the way that they've run their front court, the wing defenders that they've had to rely on, where DeAndre Bembry is important to this team. They've been so banged up that David Duke played the other night. There has to be some opponent on like misfortune caked in there. And if they come crashing down on defense at any point this season, their offense has not been consistent enough with James Harden playing at this level to say, hey, they're the best team in the East, or they're going to beat the Bucks 4 times in 7 tries. And I don't know what the path to them, aside from James Harden playing like the James Harden they thought they traded for, I don't know what their path is to being that team.
Just to put the numbers to it, their offensive rating right now clocks in at 11th. They're relying on non-shooters, like you said, DeAndre Bembry, good defender, actually had a hell of a game in that one game against the Suns where they lost. But generally, when you're relying on guys like Bembry, James Johnson, non-shooters who are actually in the rotation, maybe some of that will be helped when Joe Harris finally comes back. But Yeah, they don't scare me. They really don't. It just doesn't look like a team that has the offensive makings of a real threat.
Yeah. Not to mention like 41 minutes a game from Kevin Durant. like a lot of that is baked into this when you talk. He's just playing so much lately to the point where like he's making jokes about how he just wants to play the whole game just to get reporters freaking out about the amount of minutes he's playing so far. And it's an interesting team because, they could be really, I don't know, like, is there a chance Kyrie Irving comes back at some point? Like, it's really tough to
Is there going to be a vegan-based vaccine?
Yeah, that's what somebody said, that he might be willing to take a plant-based vaccine at some point, which is it sounds like such like an AI generated headline that's just like a mixture of all 2021 tweets put into one.
I wrote a bot to read 1,000 Kyrie Irving articles, and this is what it spit out.
Yeah. So who knows what they're going to be going forward? But I'm done with them because I want to talk about this next group because I think it's a fascinating group of teams. And I put 5 teams in this, and I'm going to just say it right now. This is the teams that could be contenders. Maybe just if they just kind of clicked all together, or maybe if they make a trade at some point. And I want to say this before I even get started. I put the Lakers in this group only because LeBron James is still on the Lakers, and I felt like I had to, just out of respect for LeBron James, put the Lakers on this group. I'm not really convinced of them even in this group, to be honest. But I have Bulls, Heat, Clippers, and Clippers, have the obvious caveat of if Kawhi Leonard comes back, Cavs, and Lakers as 5 teams that are sort of just outside of the contender group that, 3 months from now could be solidly in that group. Dan, first of all, do you agree with those teams, or do you have any more?
So you said Bulls, Heat, Cavs, Clippers, and Lakers, right?
Yes.
You don't think the Sixers are in there?
That's
Sixers,
what I was thinking
yeah.
of
The
too.
Sixers, that's a great point. I just had them out of it because it's just so tough. Once they make a trade, I think they could definitely be in there.
Yeah, I think I would agree with all of those. The Clippers I might displace because I just don't see Kawhi coming back this season. The fact that he opened the door, I think, means a ton. But if we were dealing in that hypothetical, like, then maybe the Nuggets belong there if Jamal Murray's going to come back too. So those teams are like kind of in their own weird tier where if those players come back or if they made a move, but you can't envision them making a move because why would you make a move if you don't know those players are coming back?
Yeah. It's really tough. Like the Nuggets are a great example. Like I think that the Nuggets could be really good, but there was an element to the Nuggets last season with Jokic playing without everyone. By the end of the season, he was clearly so exhausted that he could barely keep up defensively in the playoffs. And he's doing it again, like every single thing in that team is on his shoulders right now. And how long can they sustain that? I want to talk about the Bulls though. Is there the Bulls are really good. They're like really good so far this season. Should they be in that? Is it really just because of our biases before the season that the Bulls are not in that contender status right now?
It could be, but I think there's also when you watch DeMar DeRozan in the playoffs in Toronto and seeing how his offense was impacted in postseason settings at points, it could make you feel like, yeah, they still have Zach LaVine, but the Raptors also had Kyle Lowry for a lot of those series. And now you have Vooch playing like a shell of himself that you're just been not shooting the ball well at all. They feel like a team that would need like an offensive heavy wing to really help them out and nudge them into that circle. They're certainly on like that outer bank of fringe contenders, but I think it's fair to, while they've clearly exceeded expectations, I can't believe their defense is as good as it's been for most of the season. Just DeMar DeRozan's track record in the playoffs, I don't know how I would feel about him going up against like Milwaukee's defense, for instance. Like, I just don't know that he would stand much of a chance over a course of that series. And again, he's been spectacular. I think a lot of people are going to have him high up on their MVP ballots. So I don't mean to discount what he's done, but that is something that I have thought about.
Sam, what do you think of the Bulls?
I'm just looking at actually Vooch's stat line, and it pains me as someone who's been a staunch supporter of him in the past. As maybe the main limiter of their ceiling here, you'd really need to come up on the right series for him of just like sustained, 38, 40% 3-point shooting, because he's not really giving you much else. And defense obviously has always been a concern with him as well. I have nothing bad to say whatsoever about Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. I have nothing bad to say whatsoever about the perimeter point of attack defense with Caruso and Lonzo. But yeah, it feels like there are concerns there as it pertains to getting to the next level. And really, Milwaukee is that team to beat right now. And I don't know exactly how they do it.
Yeah. What about the Heat? I want to ask you, Dan. I think the Heat, I don't know. I'm not fully bought in. I love the Heat normally. This year, I'm not fully bought into them so far. And, Bam Adebayo is currently injured. And, at some point, he should be coming back this season. So by the time the playoffs are back, he should be back in there. Ideally could be at full health. What do you think about the Heat so far?
I do think a lot of it comes back to health. And I've been entering the season, I was concerned about their depth, and they've actually had one of the most efficient benches in the league this year. A lot of that is obviously Tyler Hero playing at an otherworldly level. And I think what we're seeing from him is more sustainable than not. It's just, you've had Duncan Robinson struggling a lot this year, and he still does. Just his movement and him being on the floor does help you. At the same time, like, are we really counting on Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Dwayne Dedmon to give you these important playoff minutes? Because they're going to have to at some point. And this is nothing to say of, look, they're a little bit older between Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler at the top. What if something happens to Lowry, or what does Bam Adebayo look like coming back from his injury? So if they're healthy, I think they're probably the most intriguing fringe team to me in the East. One of the teams you didn't mention that I might be willing to put up there is Atlanta. Yeah. Philly's there, of course, too. If they move Ben Simmons for anyone just to get value, or if Ben Simmons plays, maybe that hurts them at this point. Who knows? I don't know. But Cleveland Cleveland's been fun, and dunks and threes has them as like the best team in the league relative to strength of schedule and their point differential. But like, I don't know, like they have to make a pretty substantial
year away.
Like they're going to beat the Bucks or the Nets or the Heat or the Bulls.
Well, I heard you and Adam talking about this though on your last episode of Hardwood Knocks. Cleveland has come out so strong. Is there a surprise move that they could make to really launch them into the next tier, or should they just hang back and say, you know what, we're fine with this progression at our current rate. We're a year away, because that's a smaller market and it's hard for them to attract free agent talent, obviously. So when you have a guy like Mobley on such an accelerated timeline now, where he's playing so well in year one, and you have Garland obviously on their rookie contract as well, maybe they should just maximize their amount of time that they have with the right core together and swing for something.
Yeah, they definitely can, just because you have Isaac Okoro, who's been playing super well on offense of late. You have like matching salary. I know Rubio's been important to them, but he can't be a deal breaker if you're trying to swing a blockbuster. And even Kevin Love's money. He's been better this season, more engaged on the bench too. It'd be really cruel to move him now as you're getting good, but and you have Sexton too. Like there's a team that will value his restricted free agency rights. And if you're a team that becomes a seller, which, that's a different discussion, is how many actual sellers will there be at the deadline? I think that's what makes a lot of this tough to figure out. But if you're a seller, couldn't you pretty easily talk yourself into betting against Cleveland's immediate future if they want to give you this year's pick or a pick in 2023? And maybe they're not willing to go out that far, but could this be a flash? I don't think they're a flash in the pan, but it is like the Cavs, and you have to rely a lot on the progression of Garland and Mobley and Allen really elevating them to that contender status. And I don't think what they've shown us is fake. I'm just saying, I think if they were a team that said, we will trade future first round picks, they're going to get more bites at their packages than I think a lot of these other good teams would.
I know everyone listening to this knows what I think, but I believe I believe in them. I just watch that team and I'm like, everything makes sense. I will say, if they trade Rubio, like I think Rubio might be maybe second best backup point guard in the NBA. Like he's up there. I think his
behind
defense,
Elfrid Payton.
Behind Elfrid Payton. I'm not sure who would be the best. Who is the best? Dan, you probably have a better grasp on this than me. Who's the best backup point guard in the NBA?
Monte Morris is starting this year.
And Jalen Brunson sometimes comes off the bench.
Derrick Rose has been really good, or Emmanuel Quickly. Cam Payne has been all over the place this year. So
yeah. It might be Rubio is, I guess, the point that I'm trying to make here. And you have Rubio and Kevin Love, as up and down as they can be sometimes offensively. I still think there's a stabilizing presence on the bench that really helps that team out. But I wonder if you talked about how they're rated based on strength of schedule. They've had one of the toughest schedules so far. The rest of the season is one of the easiest schedules of any team in the NBA. They're right now currently fourth in net rating after the Warriors, Jazz, and Suns, which is nuts. And look, yes, a lot of it is on the shoulders of a rookie, and I think what scares a lot of people. And it really is. Like, Mobley makes a huge difference defensively on this team, because first of all, he doesn't have to play center. He's capable of guarding on the perimeter. If any team plays them with any sort of non-shooter, then they have two guys in the paint with Mobley and Allen that just are not going to let you get to the rim
right
at all. And that's just an insane type of defense. Now, you could say, I think they're going to make the playoffs at this point. I'm just going to say that just because I think their schedule, once it gets easy, I think they can rattle off some wins here. You could make a case that maybe they won't be successful in the playoffs, but like, part of me wonders if they're kind of like the Hawks last year and they could make a surprise run at least to the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe beat a team that they're quote unquote not supposed to beat. And even with Darius Garland, you try to make a comparison to how he plays. It's probably the closest, to be honest, to Trae Young at this point. He's not Trae Young, but like, that's kind of the style of basketball that he plays. So I guess that's part of what goes into my thinking here. I wonder if at some point there's going to be somebody brave enough to call them a contender, I guess, Dan, is what I'm getting at.
It won't be me. I can tell you that much. And look, I mean, there are just questions I have. Like, they have Larry Markkinen defending like superstar guards. Like, they've just decided that we're just going to throw him to the wolves, and it hasn't been a disaster. And I'm just curious, like, what happens in the playoffs there? Everything you say, though, and the Trae Young comp is very interesting, because when you look at Garland, at least in the lane, they take different types of 3-point shots, but Garland in the lane with his composure and like the floater, I could see a little bit of Trae Young.
The ball handling.
Yeah. Is there an in-between move for them to make, like a Karis LeVert or an Eric Gordon? You run into problems, I guess, with matching salary, but if you're including a first-round pick, I'm not giving up Isaac Okoro, I think, for either of those guys, but that could just be a move where it's okay. They solidify themselves as the playoff team that you called them, and maybe they're super annoying or even win a first-round series.
Yeah,
I think they would be one of the ideal destinations for LeVert. I think that's a great idea, and is one of those things where you can kind of play both sides. It doesn't necessarily have to be all about this season, but he kind of matches the timeline as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. The other team that I have, and I don't want to spend too much on this, is the Lakers. I guess I'll just ask you, Dan, do you have any reason to believe that they could be legit contenders by the end of the season?
I think it's just, what does Anthony Davis look like at this point? Because I know people have focused a lot on just sort of his offensive variance, and that's certainly part of the concern, but he's been pushed around at points on defense this year. Is that a mindset thing? Is he banged up? He leads the league. He might lead NBA history in the number of could-be season-ending injuries suffered, just based off what happens when he's on the ground and what it looks like. I will say, as a vote in their favor, when they play with Davis at center and LeBron and Russ are on the court, they're a plus 10 something points per 100 possessions right now. And so that's just the pathway. And as long as you have that, I think they'll be competitive, but they need to figure out a way to rejigger the rest of their roster. And I just don't know, will they get lucky on the buyout market? Maybe. Does Trevor Ariza get healthy? Am I really talking about Trevor Ariza being the difference maker of a could-be contender? That's a little sad. Does Talon Horton-Tucker get you anyone? Can you combine him with Kendrick Nunn to take back a player? If you told me they were able to swing a trade for like an Eric Gordon or Justin Holiday, I would feel a lot better about them. But I think of a lot of the teams we've discussed, it'd be easier to say they have a higher ceiling than the Bulls or the Cavs. But like, how good do you feel about them reaching that ceiling based off everything you've seen?
Yeah, I don't believe.
Are you going to ask me what I think, Mike?
Yeah, what do you think, Sam?
Washed. Pack them in. No, and really, I'm just saying that because it's a Suns podcast, so no one will mind me saying that. But yeah, we're 27 games in with the Lakers.
I'm sorry to interrupt there. Would you rather have, like, let's say Memphis made a move because they're built to make one. Like, are we sure that the Lakers are going to be better than the Grizzlies in a playoff setting right now? Is essentially my point. Okay,
we're not sure. We're not sure.
That seems like a problem. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a massive problem, Dan.
Let me just quickly say too that this is the worst LeBron team to watch ever. I think they're not entertaining, and that's such a weird thing to say for a team with LeBron James. And I know that doesn't matter as far as this conversation goes, but like the Lakers are on TV a lot. And I just have not had fun watching them at all. And I have in the past, like as much as I dislike the Lakers, I still enjoy LeBron James, and he's not who he has been in the past. And especially with clogged lanes, which is what he's facing on a night-to-night basis with this team with no shooters at all. But even rookie LeBron James was insanely entertaining, even if that team wasn't very good. And we're just at the point with LeBron where we're watching him on this Lakers team on TV over and over and over again, and it's kind of depressing, and that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, and he's been good, but the demeanor is different. And I even think like this is just uncharted territory for him when you're looking at the Russ fit, even on the good Russ nights. And then we've seen LeBron play sparingly at backup 5, and he's struggled in drop coverage defensively. And it's like, are we really talking about like LeBron having to learn how to be like the primary dropper on defense when he's in year, what is this, 27, 37 of it? Like, so it's sad. And it's weird to say because I do think that they have a higher ceiling than they've shown, but they've played one of the 5 easiest schedules to date. And I know they've missed LeBron James for some of that. I know Russ has had to work through the motions. I'm just, aside from LeBron and AD being LeBron and AD, and the fact that LeBron is, LeBron's been better than AD this season. And the fact that we're saying that when LeBron's about to turn 37 is super problematic. I don't know how you could have confidence in saying this team is even one of the 4 most likely teams to come out of the West. Where it's like, we have the very clear top 3. And I think a lot of people would shoehorn the Lakers into 4. And I'm like, you know what? I might prefer even the Nuggets or the Clippers or perhaps the Grizzlies.
You really have to be delusional or have ulterior financial motives at this point to believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, everything you mentioned, the schedule. You've also got LeBron being as old as he is playing 3 minutes per game more than last year. So the schedule is getting harder. You've got guys with more tired legs. Most of them are 33 plus. There's nothing that works in this team's favor right now. And there's really nothing to
Taylor
suggest they're going to
Tucker is shooting like a negative percentage outside of the paint.
It's just, yeah.
Do you think they'd trade LeBron for Dario Saric, Jalen Smith, and a protected first-round pick? Because that's what we're going to get into. Now, let's talk about trades. Obviously, they wouldn't do that. The December 15th, Wednesday, is the first day that most recently signed NBA players are allowed to be traded. Now, 2 things before we get to that. Normally, trades don't happen this time of year, even though they're allowed to happen this time of year. I think I heard somebody say that the last time a trade happened right at December 15th or around whatever that date is was 2019 or something like that. So it's not often. Players, GMs often sign players this time of year and don't want to trade them because they're players that they just signed. They want to see it through. And also, I think in this particular year, every team, there's very few teams that you could make the case are not trying to compete for the NBA playoffs at this point in the NBA. Maybe the Kings, maybe the Magic. I think the Magic, you could say yes. And then, of course, there's the Thunder. Outside of that, I don't know. There's just not a lot of teams that you could say that. Secondly, it seems like the Ben Simmons trade could happen at some point in the next, it was just reported by Woj that talks were heating up, if you will. So this is the one caveat to trades normally don't happen this time of year. If a Ben Simmons trade does happen, that could be a 2-team trade. That could be a 3-team trade. You don't know. I don't know. Who knows? It's Daryl Morey. It could be a 5-team trade at some point. So I think that is the caveat to, although trades don't normally happen this time of year, maybe something big like that happens that could shake up the NBA a little bit, and that could cause pieces to move around a little bit more. And for the Suns, there's not a lot of players that become like available to trade for the Suns. Technically it's like JaVale McGee, Abdul Nader. It's players like that. It's not really, the Suns kept most of their team. So it's not like it opens up a big thing for the Suns. I think you're just looking at potential names. So what I want to do is throw around some names just with the 3 of us and just talk about the potential for the Suns to make a move. Maybe not necessarily now, maybe closer to the trade deadline when teams start to understand a little bit more about who they are. So Sam, I know you have a few. I'm going to start with you.
I've got a lot.
Let's just throw out some names. Feel free to make the case. You can just name one if you want, or feel free to make the case for any of them.
Can I start with needs first?
Yes.
Like broadly defined needs. So I think this team needs wing depth. We talked about Ish Wainwright playing earlier, but Specifically, you'd like to have the small ball option that you lost in Dario Saric for the year. So yeah, and that you lost in Torrey Craig. So any potential bigger wing who can play 4-5 would be great. The only other need that I have circled here, but this one I think you could approach through the buyout market is, oh my God, for the love of God, please stop playing Elfrid Payton as the fifth guard. So that would be, you're in a situation. Well, I mean, yeah, you're in a situation right now where if any of the top 4 guards miss time, and it's happened to a bunch of them so far. Booker's out right now. Cam Payne has missed time. Landry Shamet or Chris Paul. I mean, you can't count on Chris Paul to play all 82 games and certainly in the playoffs. And if any of those 4 guards misses time, now you're throwing Elfrid Payton out there in lineups where he's not a spacer whatsoever. So just having like any shooter that you could pluck off the buyout market to play instead of Elfrid Payton and let someone else handle the ball, that would be great.
Well, one more need
to be a defender.
Just to remind you, Sam, Jalen Smith did play like half the game, the last game the Suns played. So there's also
you're right. I'm a little less
center.
I'm a little.
You're saying
less
the need is to play Jalen Smith more. Is all I'm
yeah,
hearing.
exactly.
Possibly to boost his trade value. I'm a little bit less concerned about that one after I heard James Jones in his interview on the broadcast the other week saying he believes Frank Kaminsky is a few weeks away. If you can get Frank back as a third string center and you acquire a small ball option, I feel really good about where the Bigs rotation is.
And maybe even Dario in a few months. Maybe.
Yeah, it's possible. Dario has started. He's getting back to work. We see him out in the gym getting shots up at least now. I think it's entirely possible he could be ready by the playoffs. I just can't promise anything. Okay. So I think this is the tier of everyone knows these names because everyone's thrown them out. So the obvious team is you look at the Pacers, Torrey Craig and Justin Holiday. Justin Holiday would be wing depth. He could also slot in as another guard option, but he's really a 2-3. And Torrey Craig is Torrey Craig. And for these, you're talking about Jalen Smith and a second round pick. And does that get anything done? I don't know, Dan. What do you think? Like, are there going to be? I already know your answer to this. Are there going to be just a million teams offering a package for Justin Holiday at the deadline? And if so, does that mean the Pacers can expect to get a first round pick or what?
I'd be a little bit surprised if they got a first round pick just for Justin Holiday. He is under contract for another year, so that helps. I'm wondering if there's a team, because they make so little together. You mentioned both their names, but like they trade for Torrey Craig and Justin Holiday, and maybe they're getting off money that they don't necessarily want for next season, and that's their path to getting a first. So I'd be shocked if Jalen Smith plus a first got you, plus a second got you Justin Holiday. Maybe it gets you Torrey Craig back, but that would be a whole different conversation of, did you really just trade to value to get back a player who you had for free last year?
I mean, I would do it. It definitely makes you look stupid in hindsight that you use the 10th overall pick on a guy who you then traded.
His third year option anyway. Like, it's, we're past the point of embarrassment.
I know. Which is why I would gladly embrace Torrey Craig again with open arms. I'm just saying it's a little bit funny. The other one, Mike, I want to give you a chance here though, because I have a couple other names in this smaller tier, but I want to hear what you have to say as well.
Well, I'll quickly just mention that Zach Lowe on his podcast mentioned Jeremy Grant as a potential perfect fit for the Suns, and he just tore his ligament in his thumb.
I disagree with that, by the way, but yeah, we can put that one to rest.
I think it just...
You disagree that he tore his ligament? That's spicy.
Sam's a doctor now.
I love Jeremy Grant. I disagree that he's a perfect fit for the Suns.
Well, I mean,
you don't have to get into it.
I think, Sam, what you're talking about is if they were to trade somebody like Cameron Johnson or Jay Crowder to do that, right? Because if the Suns could do it without that, which is incredibly unlikely, although they could potentially do something like 2 first-round picks and like salary to do that, it's unlikely, but it's just something that's possible for the Suns because they have picks in the future. But yeah, I think you can rule him out. Let me see. I have a few names here. Let's see. I'll go with one of the more obvious ones again. I think we've mentioned his name probably twice on this podcast so far, but he's also played with Chris Paul. Eric Gordon as a potential for the Suns. Sam, you talked about somebody coming to the Suns with that could potentially be a small ball 5. He's not that. But we also talked about the Suns struggling to generate offense in the NBA Finals. Yeah. When you play a team like with Giannis, I think that you could say we're probably not going to defend Giannis. You have to outscore them. So Eric Gordon could come in and immediately he could potentially play in closing lineups for the Suns, especially if you don't need Jay Crowder out there defensively. Obviously, he would come off the bench for the Suns. He doesn't really fit into the starting lineup, but on nights where maybe Landry Shamet is struggling, Cameron Payne is struggling, maybe there's some overlap with Landry Shamet that doesn't make it work. But Eric Gordon's a name that stands out to me. Dan, I'd like to hear what you think about Eric Gordon to the Suns.
He was actually on my list for them. He brings like rim pressure that they don't have too. And I don't think people really realize that's how he plays. And then to have him stretch the floor as far as he does from three, I think you can use him next to anyone in any different kind of lineup. And we've seen, obviously not recently, but in years past, like he's been able to defend wings in the playoffs. And he's like, his salary's in the sweet spot where they can't do it just for Jalen Smith and Dario Saric. They would have to be like a 3-for-1, but maybe it could be a 3-for-2 to make it easier. And if I'm Phoenix and you have the opportunity to do that, I would absolutely pull the trigger. I think I saw some debate on Twitter that a lot of people didn't like the idea of him in Phoenix, but I actually love the idea of Eric Gordon in Phoenix. And look, he already tried to go there once. Like let's let him play in Phoenix already. Come on.
As long as we're debating, can I go to my big idea now? I don't even know if this is one I really like. I just want to get your guys' opinion to gauge it. If we're going into that kind of bigger $20 million salary level.
Okay.
So Jeremy Grant, the reason I don't like it, he's not the name. The reason I don't like Jeremy Grant is he's obviously a scorer. We talked about what are the big needs for this team before. Like say you go up against Milwaukee again, how much would it benefit you to have another guy who can go and get his own offense? Obviously, it would for this team in case Chris Paul, Devin Booker breaks down again, just another guy who can go and get his own bucket without sacrificing too much of the defense and the playmaking and the other stuff, who you're not going to get for an insane price. I wouldn't be willing. I think Zach Lowe brought up Jeremy Grant in the context of like, well, they would want Cam Johnson. I wouldn't want to give up Cam Johnson because Cam Johnson has become such an efficient part of the Suns offense in those Spain pick and rolls, his spot up shooting. It's too valuable. Grant is good, but he's just not that much of a shooter. And this team can't afford to sacrifice shooting. One guy who you could go out and get who's a bucket and can shoot though is Harrison Barnes. And that's an interesting name, I think, if you're the Suns right now, and is maybe a name where you're willing to sacrifice a guy like Cam Johnson plus a pick, plus obviously salary filler. If you go and get a guy who can really put the ball on the floor, but is also hitting 40% of his catch and shoot threes this year, I think he would be a dynamic add to their offense. I'm not honestly sure if I would actually pull the trigger. Obviously, Cam Johnson, is a guy we hope to sign to an extension and should have a long career.
You just sent him to the Kings. Wow.
And I just sent it to the Kings.
Oh,
of all teams.
That hurts to think about.
Dan, I'll start with you on that one. What do you think about, is that feasible for Phoenix? Would that affect their ceiling as a contender in your eyes?
I do think it helps them. I'm just curious whether, the package would have to be Smith, Saric, Cam Johnson, and then a first, I would think.
Yeah, Smith, I would say it's Smith, Saric, Johnson, and a first, and you're getting back Barnes and like the smallest salary the Kings have. I don't know who that is.
And, Barnes technically would take the place of Jay Crowder in the starting lineup. So, I don't think they would take Jay Crowder, I guess is what your point is, Dan, right?
Yeah, I don't know. He just wouldn't fit with what they were doing if they were selling off Barnes. And I think, look, Johnson and a first round pick. And then look, Saric is good when he's healthy, and that's a manageable salary to move next season to help match trades. That would be, I probably wouldn't do it if I'm Phoenix, not because I don't like Harrison Barnes in Phoenix. If you told me that was the only move they could make, I would say, yes, do it. But I would imagine that there are smaller to medium-sized deals that they could make that would at least get like 50% of what they need.
For sure. And let me address that real quick too. By the way, I just want to throw out the stats because I feel like so that people don't have to go and look them up. Barnes this year is averaging 18 points, 6.8 rebounds, 2.4 assists per game. He's shooting 47, 39, 84. So, that's kind of where I was thinking where he fills a certain offensive role. He would average fewer points in Phoenix's offense, but he's in a certain offensive tier that Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson are just not in.
He also allows them to do the small ball five that you were talking about, which I think is a really interesting five.
And kind of how fascinating would it be to roll him out with your own death lineup against Golden State too? Would be kind of poetic. But
if you both would do that trade, excuse me, I'm surprised that you guys would be on board with that.
I don't know that I would. I really like Cameron Johnson, and I think that his shooting still is not quite at the peak of what it could be. And the level of shooting I think that he can get and that he did get in the NBA playoffs last season, I think is pretty high. So I'm torn. I wouldn't say no right away, though.
I like Cam Johnson, but I'm not convinced about the ceiling that I think some other Suns fans see in him. And I think if you roll into a playoff series with Harrison Barnes and you're in a series against Milwaukee and you're stuck at 80 points in the fourth quarter like you were in a couple of games back in June or July, whenever that was, a guy like Barnes would help you in a way like that Cam Johnson couldn't. However, let me roll on to the next options. If you want just 50 or 60% of that, A couple other names. Kenrich Williams has been brought up. He'd be great.
Yeah.
I don't know what it takes. I don't know if you need does that cost a first round pick? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But he's playing for OKC. They're one of the only sellers in the league. And the one other guy I have on my list here, tell me what you think about this, Dan, is Kyle Anderson. Are the Grizzlies willing to give up Kyle Anderson? And that would definitely cost you a first round pick. But there's another bigger wing, can do the whole playmaking thing. The only concern there is he's not a spacing threat, but I think would definitely be worth a look too.
I mean, you guys are just pulling names off my list at this point. It's like,
yeah, we got to let Dan go.
That's fine. I want to go back to Kendrick Williams. He's at the top of my Phoenix trade targets list. And I think I mentioned him to you like leading into the season as a Suns trade target.
Yeah, you did.
So I promise I'm not just parroting Zach Lowe because now everyone's talking about Kendrick Williams because
you
Zach
were first. No, Dan, you were first. You were first. And this, by the way, everyone, listen to Hardwood Knocks, subscribe to Hardwood Knocks, because truly, I want to give it the full testimonial. It is, I believe, quite possibly the most underrated national NBA podcast. And Dan, you were first on Kenrich Williams, so you deserve full credit for that. That's super sweet. And I need to take my victory laps because there are so few of them. So I'm taking the Kendrick Williams ones, but I like that you named him because I think when you talk about just doing something, cost is an issue because he's so cheap that it's like, okay, you're not just going to get him for Jalen Smith. I don't know if I'd give up a first round pick for him. He's been good enough where it's close. And if you're Phoenix and you say, hey, in 2024, we still expect to be really good, I'd probably need someone else back in that deal. Kyle Anderson's super interesting to me because of all the reasons you just mentioned. And we're in year 2 of him not sucking when it comes to just shooting wide open threes.
Yeah, corner
so
threes.
If you can count on him to do that, that's like he can play real minutes for you in the postseason. I'd be curious what it takes to get him, especially because Memphis seems like it's trying to win now. At the same time, his role has been, when he's healthy, marginalized within that rotation, probably due more so than anything to the rise of Desmond Bane. And so if it's just an issue of if you wanted to get off Dario Saric's salary, maybe that's when you would include the first round pick, but maybe you're able to get him for Jalen Smith and Abdel Nader and seconds or something because Memphis doesn't want to resign him.
That would be a massive steal.
Yeah.
A massive steal if you could swing that.
Dan, you have any other names we haven't mentioned?
So I have them tangentially. I have Larry Nance Jr. and Karis LeVert in parentheticals. I don't love either of them for this team. Larry Nance has been, so I used to love Larry Nance for this team, but I think he does need to play more 5 than the minutes they have to offer. Karis LeVert is the one that I thought long and hard about. And maybe you could fold that into a Justin Holiday trade, which is when you would then really unload you keep Cam Johnson, but maybe you're willing to give 2 first round picks if you're getting off of Saric and Smith and then another salary and you're getting those 2 guys back.
Yeah.
Karis LeVert has been so rocky and he's not going to give you, neither he nor Justin Holiday gives you the small ball defensive option, even though they really do deepen your wing rotation. The name that I have, because this team is, to me, tottering on the brink of it's time to sell and look ahead to next season. And he's quietly having a fairly good year. Josh Richardson is really interesting for Phoenix. He is, I think they know what he can do on defense. He's been better on defense this year than the past couple seasons. His offense has been a lot better. He's shooting over 50% on off the dribble 2s. He's shooting a good enough clip on catch and shoot 3s. It's not great. Shooting over 50% on drives. And he's someone who could defend really 1 through 4 for you. And so I don't know what it takes to get him if Boston becomes a quasi seller, but you could expand to make bigger trades where it's does Boston not want to pay Grant Williams? And he's been having a good year. So you make it a slightly bigger deal, but Richardson is the name based off what he's done this season that I think would be intriguing for the Suns, even though he's not getting to the rim really at all this season. It would be nice. Eric Gordon's getting to the rim way more than Josh Richardson.
Yeah. Do you really think Boston's there though?
They should be.
They're pretty bad.
Their roster their roster doesn't work. I'm not here to argue that. I just kind of felt that they would be one of those teams that talks themselves into thinking, we're competing for something the entire year.
I agree with you. I am at the point though where it's there are so few sellers to go to that I'm going to try and spot teams that maybe they don't view trading Josh Richardson as this huge net negative for them either. Because if Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are both healthy at the same time, and also Romeo Langford's been great for them this season. So maybe they look at that as an opportunity of, if we're getting an asset for Josh Richardson, then you get into the conversation of, if you're Phoenix, are you willing to go Saric and a first for Josh Richardson. And he is under contract for next year at a very reasonable number. So I might consider it. But Boston just feels like a team where it's maybe they're not blowing it up, but there are guys that I think they can talk themselves into moving, knowing that they're not going to be part of the iteration of our team that's actually supposed to be a contender, because that's not this season's squad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you guys have literally named everyone that I've had on my list, except for one name that I'll bring up in just a second. But I want to just quickly touch on Karis LeVert, because Karis LeVert is not, like, defensively, I think that he's not exactly a perfect fit on this team. But I think when you're talking about defensively for the Suns, you're talking about a guy who will just slot in and fill a role and just be in that role. But offensively, I picture Karis LeVert in the Suns offense in the Devin Booker role in minutes that Devin Booker's off the court. And it just works. It just works in my mind. And I just think if I picture Karis LeVert on the Suns, I picture a Monty Williams maximizing what he can be in a smaller role. And then as the playoffs come, there's the potential of him carrying you for a few minutes, sort of Alec Burks style for the Knicks when he was on the bench. And I like that fit. He makes a lot of money and he is injury prone, so it's a little tough. But like I could just picture it, I guess is my point. Karis LeVert kind of works in my mind, but I get why you'd be afraid of that. What makes you less likely to do that, Dan? You seem to be a little hesitant.
Because I do think he needs to be able to play off the ball better, and he hasn't shown the capacity to do that consistently, even in Brooklyn. That was a struggle of his, and it hasn't happened in Indiana. So while that on-ball offense is valuable, and you can look, the way Devin Booker has played this season, which is, one of the underrated parts about Devin Booker is he's played like the alpha all everything role for so long that it's clear he's willing to just he's always been scalable, but it feels like he embraces the scalability with which he's able to move off the ball. You could definitely make things work with Karis LeVert, but I think if you're going to give up the value it takes to get Karis LeVert and you're going to pay Karis LeVert what he's making, you'd like to have the option of playing all three of your stars together. Or I say stars, but him with Chris Paul and Devin Booker, and have faith that it works. And I just think he poses too many issues if you displace him from the ball.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess it makes sense. I think that it's interesting to just sort of rate the difference between, say, Harrison Barnes and Kenrich Williams and the types of trades you can make. And even talking about Boston, just to make the point, this is why trades don't happen this season. Boston can still talk themselves into being a good team if everyone's healthy going forward. And that's why trades happen in February instead of in December normally. One quick name that I just want to mention because it just feels like a James Jones player is Kelly Olynyk, who's currently on Detroit. He's been injured, but supposedly he'll come back like sometime by the end of this month. He just feels like a guy that when James Jones signs players, he likes players that are super, super versatile at their position. Kelly Olynyk is super versatile. He makes $12 million. This is the tough part for the Suns. He makes $12 million, and I don't think that the Suns would be willing to do that. But I could just kind of, for some reason, I could just picture James Jones looking at Kelly Olynyk and saying, yeah, I like that as a chess piece.
He does have a type with white skilled big men. So it sort of fits the whole approach.
If he's going to go that route, I would prefer him to go after Maxi Kleber than Kelly Olynyk.
Do you think Maxi will be available?
Well, so I wasn't going to name them because they're like kind of jokes, but the Mavs aren't going anywhere. And I think it's clearly time that they probably need to tinker with stuff. And if you're going to make a semi bigger move, Maxi Kleber and Dorian Finney-Smith package, if you're the Suns, what are you willing to, again, this is not the Cam Johnson tier type of package, but you start thinking about what future picks you're going to throw out in addition to salary to get those guys. They're in the same conference. The Mavericks think that they're competing for something, but they're not. I mean, let's just be honest. Unless they make this huge move themselves, and you already got Mike, I think, talked about this, just the issue of teams have to look internally and decide to actually sell. But I think Maxi Kleber specifically could be had based off the way that Dallas is running his front court rotation right now. The minutes with him and KP after being really good last year have been a disaster this year. I think he's been a little bit too injury prone, and he's definitely lost a step on defense, but the Suns don't need Maxi Kleber to defend Paul George like the Dallas Mavericks do. What he could do for Phoenix, I think, would be absolutely spectacular. And it's probably on the higher end of a role player cost if Dallas is sending it to a a conference rival, but he was a name that I considered for them.
Now, are the Mavs, would that mean though that the Mavs are in retool mode, or is like anyone outside of Luka?
The Blazers prefer you
like
call it enhancement mode.
enhancement mode. Enhance. Like is KP on the table?
For what do you mean, Kristaps?
Yeah. For
like you want him on the Suns?
No.
Oh.
I don't want him on the Suns, but I mean, just like theoretically.
Yeah, they would absolutely. I have no doubt in my mind that they would move Kristaps Porzingis in a heartbeat if they were actually rebuilding. I think Kristaps Porzingis would be off the team already because I do think there are teams that would take a chance on him. The issue with the Mavs is they need actual value for Kristaps, and so you can probably get away with moving a Maxi Kleber and not dropping off too much based off what's happening this season. But if you move one of just your core salary guys as a dump, that's when you admit to yourself that you're actually rebuilding. I don't think Maxi Kleber is anywhere near on that scale, but I have no doubt in my mind that Kristaps Porzingis is readily available.
That's fascinating. Interesting week coming up. Maybe Ben Simmons will be moved. Maybe nothing will happen. Who knows? Maybe nothing at all will happen in the entire NBA, and then we're just waiting for trades until February. But now, Suns fans, I guess you have a list of guys that you can look at and covet and argue about whether or not they would be good on the Suns.
And yell at us about that we even brought them up in the first place.
Exactly.
We only traded Cam Johnson once, so this should be fine. Like the reaction shouldn't be that inflammatory.
Yeah,
exactly.
We'll see.
Dan, thank you so much for joining us. Listen to Hardwood Knocks. Read everything Dan writes for Bleacher Report. Follow Dan on Twitter. Is there anything else that you would like to promote, Dan?
No, you guys covered it. This was a blast. Thank you so much for having me as always.
Thanks again. If you'd like any extra content from us, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/thetimeline. You can get extra podcast episodes, written content, and even hear us call games live occasionally through a program called Playback. That's patreon.com/thetimeline.